I have a friend living in Florida. So the question is, should she sell her house? And she said she doesn't want to make any emotional, rash decisions. And I thought, well, what's my opinion? So I've tried to get my thoughts together here, and this is going to be somewhat of a ramble, just a bunch of ideas, because it's very, very complicated. So many variables. Anyway, I did a little presentation, and here it is. Should you sell your house if you live in Florida? Okay, the first thing is that it's better to be together in Florida than to be separated. After a hurricane, one of you in a nice penthouse in some big city, living it up, the other in your poor house. So family's always first. I'm not advocating leaving Florida. Okay, let's talk energy. Fossil fuels equal wealth as we know it. And this chart just tries to drive that point home. On the left, you can see the per capita energy consumption, the burning of fossil fuels, and the bottom, the GDP per capita. There are no countries that have high GDP that don't burn a lot of fossil fuels. None. But the easy oil is gone. And this is something that politicians won't tell people. And it's getting more expensive to mine. What you especially want to look at is how the inflation-adjusted costs has slowly been going up since the 50s, but starting in 2000, it's begun to accelerate. And it's a well-known reason why it's accelerating. So in this chart, we're looking at easy oil, and that's basically field oil. So that's the oil that you think about, like somebody goes out, drills a hole, and out pops the black gold. And Hubbard predicted in the 50s that it would basically start to decline in 1970, which it did, and it has been declining since then. Same thing, oil out in the sea, so drilling rig oil, that came online, so that boosted things, but that too is starting to run out. The easy stuff. And then fracking has come about. Now, fracking is very energy intensive. It takes huge amounts of water and energy to pump the water into the ground, break apart the shale, and bring out the oil. But the good thing is it brings the supply. So that's why we still have a lot of supply, even though it's getting expensive. But even shale oil will start to run out. And this chart looks like it's saying 1935 or something like that. So that's what's coming down the pike. Yet the burning of fossil fuels continues to rise, and you can see in this chart, again, coal is sort of evened out, oil is evening out, and then now this is gas. So gas has now been the big thing that's really allowing fossil fuels to continue burning. So if you just look at the history of oil, right, you're starting with whale oil, then coal. Well, actually, no, you start with wood, whale oil, coal, oil, gas. Of course, oil that's fracking, but we're running out. We're just running out of sources. And renewables only add energy for miscellaneous non-industrial uses like driving around in your EV, your computer. It's not doing anything. It's the biggest lie going. It just, I don't even know what to say. So all these people riding around their Teslas and EVs, if they think they're saving the planet, it's doing nothing. It's like a sliver of, again, if you look at the chart here, this is renewables, this little sliver up here. All this, coal, oil, and gas, this is all the majority of the energy that we need. So fossil fuels are mined to meet total demand. And this is a concept that one should understand. They're not mined to get the highest price from the wealthy because the wealthy can only use so much. So intuitively, you want to think like, oh, well, as we're running out of oil, the wealthy can take the oil. No, because they only burn so much. Oil only makes sense in the economy when everybody is essentially using it. So what's going to happen is as oil gets more expensive and there's less supply, you can have energy apartheid. You can have some countries doing wealthy from fossil fuels and some not. Like the U.S. is always going to be, well, not always, but is wealthy because we have huge oil in the Permian Basin or Texas, places like that. But again, it's shale oil, so it's going to run out. But we can already find energy apartheid in Lebanon, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nigeria, Iraq, etc. So what we have is the haves and have-nots of fossil fuels, and it'll only get worse as we move ahead. So getting back to Florida, the fossil fuels made Florida what it is today. Florida is not large just because people want warmer temperatures and low taxes. That is secondary. It's no ACs, no fossil fuels to generate electricity for ACs, and no Florida. So I think 80% of the energy or 90% of the energy that goes to running an AC in Florida comes from coal or gas or one of the fossil fuels. So let's talk climate change now. No place on Earth escapes the effects of greenhouse gases warming the planet. So Florida, like everywhere else, will change. We just don't know in what direction and when. But Florida has some specific risks. For starters, flooding is increasing every decade, and that's what that chart shows below. And there's no relief in sight for Florida. CO2 continues to rise, and that's a fact. Efforts to reduce it, like renewables, have had no effect. So this chart is the NO, I forget the agency. They've been measuring CO2 in the atmosphere in Hawaii since 1960, and this is a chart. So to me, this is the acid test. This is the truth. I don't care what you think is going on with fossil fuels or whatever. CO2 is released from fossil fuels, and so this is how we know. Now, of course, there's permafrost and everything now, but the bottom line is CO2 keeps rising. It has not stopped. And scientists are 99.84% certain that greenhouse gases raise global temperatures. And again, remember, it wasn't that long ago, like 10 years ago, and people were saying, oh, CO2 doesn't really warm the planet. Think about that. How many people really believe that? Many in Florida, by the way. So here we have CO2 levels, and here we have the temperature anomaly. You can see they're both completely correlated. Therefore, Florida will continue to sink because of melting ice and ocean thermal expansion. As water gets warmer, it expands, right? So, and then you add the melting ice. That's why you have all this flooding, because there's more water in the coastline. And again, this will only increase. It's being measured. This is the facts are there. There's no disputing this. And this is the ocean warming chart that scares everyone who follows climate change, because if you look at that black line, that's 2024. It has jumped tremendously, and the dotted lines essentially are each decade. So, yeah, and 2023 is that sort of orangish line. So, yeah, things are going exponential. And, yeah, but, I'm going to sound like a nut if I go into this. So why has Florida grown to 22 million compared to my youth when it was 5 million? Well, again, it's air conditioning from Asian manufacturing and shipped in building materials and other products, the whole global supply chain. So putting aside the question of climate change, Florida is completely dependent on external sources of ACs, energy, and material. Without ACs from Asia, cheap, Chinese air conditioners essentially, without the energy from fossil fuels, and without the materials that come all over the world from global shipping, there's no Florida. So if Florida went back to its natural state without those things, it cannot support the current population, or at least the current population, I doubt, would want to live there. And here we can see the lowering price of ACs fueled Florida's growth. So if you look at the cost of air conditioning in 1970, it was up here. This is the inflation-adjusted cost, and it's gone down. But now in 2020, it's leveling out. So Florida's best days are behind it because all the things that were getting cheaper and cheaper that made Florida attractive are now not getting cheaper anymore. They're leveling out, and I actually think they're going to rise. So yes, I think they're rising, but this is very early. But this is what I expect to see in the next 10 or 20 years. Now, putting aside Alaska, which is mostly empty, the state of Florida is surrounded by the longest seafront shoreline in the United States, 8,436 miles. So that's a lot of coast to deal with rising sea temperatures. Not to even mention the hurricanes. So warmer oceans mean stronger hurricanes plus sea level rising, and it also means that seawater is now polluting fresh water as it washes onto shore. So Florida is facing a lot of problems. So living in Florida, you're making 3 bets. 1, the supply of cheap ACs, fossil fuels, and materials will continue to flow in. 2, global trade will remain active. War or pandemics will not impede it. And that climate change will not continue to flood or damage homes, vehicles, and infrastructure to the point Florida faces a mass exodus, leaving no one left to pay the taxes. And I point out below that politics in Florida is pathologically focused on getting people not to think about those 3 bets. And to me, it's sort of, I mean, forget, DeSantis' politics about Disneyland or everything like that. Again, they don't want you to think about this stuff. And people don't want to know about it. So it's not like the politicians are bad. Everybody's bad. Like Florida is in a mass psychosis, believing like these things aren't happening. So take it seriously. Now, this is a general issue about climate change. In the entire history of Homo sapiens, I put Homo sapiens, CO2 is below 300 parts per million until recently, and that's what this graph shows. Humans have never lived at high levels of CO2 or temperature. Never. So we are the test. And it's not like a test we can take over. It's never been done before. So again, when you take the ocean currents rising and you take this, people that, again, follow this like me, it's like, it's very easy to say, oh, technology is going to solve it. But you're up against, again, an unknown or a known that it's never been done. Humans did not survive, did not, evolve with high temperatures. And the data is everywhere. There's less water, more droughts, and more storms. So here's the Lake Mead water levels. As you can see, has now been going down for the last 30 years. And the wet extremes and the dry extremes over time are going up. Again, the data is everywhere. And all these storms cost money, and that lowers the wealth for those who have to pay it. Floridians should know this better than anyone. I mean, look at the facts in front of you. Like, this is the amount of economic losses by decade. Flood, wildfires, extreme temperatures. It's all going up. Like, these are storms here. So floods and storms, these are especially important for Florida. And look where they are compared to the 1970s, when I was young. When I was young, you didn't, the Florida storm is something you saw in that movie with Humphrey Bogart. I forget the name of it. This big storm, and the mafia is trapped with these people or whatever. I mean, that's what you thought about the storm in Florida. You didn't think, it wasn't like it is today. So I've lived through this. Now, yes, there's more people in Florida, but still. Anyway, most scientists believe higher temperatures lead to more destructive storms. So the new Florida equation is home value equals land plus your building minus normal maintenance minus infrastructure rebuild, it's taxes for any damage, and the flood wind damage insurance or savings to basically true up your assets to what the bank expects to get back. But the good news, I found this chart on Reddit, and this is a map of Florida in 2100 after a 2-foot sea level rise and an alien attack. And you can see that Tampa is still there, and that's where my friend is, so you should be okay, I guess. Okay, so no easy answers. Greenhouse gases are raising global temperatures. Weather is becoming more severe. It doesn't guarantee how and to what extent it will affect you, so maybe the next 20 years will be more or less fine. Sea levels are rising from melting ice and ocean thermal expansion. We're almost completely dependent on fossil fuels. Renewables have not slowed down their burning, which continues to increase, and Florida burns more fossil fuels than almost anywhere. So, I mean, don't look at the situation with how fossil fuels are getting in less supply or more expensive, however you want to look at it. Again, fossil fuels are becoming harder, more expensive to mine. And the global markets are becoming unreliable. So the Houthis, diverting ships around Africa, all this is making everything that Florida needs more expensive. So in short, there's increasing risk and less energy to go around. And this slide shows how Britain has already exhausted. Now, first of all, Britain built its main power in the beginning over coal. So that's how Britain's industrial revolution was, funded in a sense. It was coal. And then they started to hurt, but then they discovered all this oil and gas in the North Sea wells, but those North Sea wells have now basically sort of run out, and that's one reason why the nation's GDP is struggling. So Britain is in a lot of trouble because they don't have oil and gas. The U.S. has been really lucky because, again, they have it. They figured out the shale thing. And that's the end of my slideshow. So thanks for watching. I just want to end by saying that everything I said in the video is not fact. There are many things that there's a lot of debate around. I just sort of couldn't help myself and said what I think. But I think I covered, the main issues about whether you should stay in Florida or not. Anyway, the best of luck to you, to any of you who live in Florida.